The envelope in Nathalie Fortin's tote bag was unremarkable by every measure. Cream-colored manila, no branding, no embossed seal, just a plain rectangle with a metal clasp that had already scratched her phone screen twice that morning. The numbers on the document inside, however, had taken her 11 years to earn. She shifted the tote onto her other shoulder and crossed the marble lobby of the Fairmont, downtown Toronto, all brass fixtures and the faint smell of cedar, moving toward the curved sofa nearest the tall windows. Daniel's meeting upstairs was running long. His assistant had texted 20 minutes ago. She didn't mind. She had a coffee going cold on the side table and the kind of quiet that only existed in hotel lobbies at 2 in the afternoon. That particular hush between the checkout rush and the dinner crowd. She'd almost finished it when she heard her name. Nathalie. Not a question. The kind of tone that already assumed it knew everything about you. She turned, slowly. Ryan Gallagher was standing near the concierge desk, about 4 meters away, dressed in a slim-fit blazer that was a half-size too tight across the shoulders. His hair was newly cut and deliberately styled. The woman beside him, tall, in a trench coat with hardware Nathalie recognized as a copy of a well-known Italian brand, had her arm looped through his, and was looking at Nathalie the way people look at something they're trying to decide if it's worth noticing. I thought that was you. Ryan walked over like he'd been invited. He hadn't. Wild, what are you doing here? Meeting someone. Nathalie kept her voice easy level. Good to see you, Ryan. This is Amber. He gestured to the woman beside him. Amber offered a brief smile that didn't reach her eyes. Amber, this is Nathalie. We used to. He paused in that particular way, like he was selecting a word with great care. Date, years ago. Hi, Amber said. Her gaze went to Nathalie's tote bag, plain canvas, no logo. You look exactly the same, Ryan said, which was not a compliment. He meant it as a neutral observation, the way someone might comment on the weather. Still doing the small firm thing? Still doing the small firm thing, Nathalie confirmed. Right. He nodded slowly. I always admired that about you, honestly, the whole you know. He waved a hand at the general idea of her, the artistic commitment, the integrity. Some people just aren't built for scale, and that's okay, it genuinely is. Nathalie said nothing. We just closed on a commercial property over on King West, he continued unprompted. Corner unit. The kind of deal that redefines what the next decade looks like for the firm. I'm not saying that to brag. Just things move quickly at the level we're operating at now. Amber squeezed his arm. That's great, Nathalie said. And she meant it the way someone means a statement that is simply accurate, without warmth attached, leaving nothing to argue against. Ryan seemed to find that slightly unsatisfying. He glanced around the lobby, at the afternoon light coming through the tall windows, and then back at her. This place is a bit much for a casual meeting, isn't it? For someone running a boutique firm? He laughed, not cruelly, just casually, the way someone laughs at something they've already decided is not serious. Or did you pick up a client with a bigger budget? I'm waiting for my husband. Ryan blinked. You got married? 3 years ago. Right. Something shifted in his expression, not jealousy exactly. More the reflexive calculation of someone who cannot help running a mental scorecard. What does he do? He's in investment. Investment. Ryan's mouth curved, like financial planning, funds? Not exactly. He seemed satisfied by the vagueness as though it confirmed something he'd already decided. He looked at her bag again, at her jeans. At her boots, which were good leather, a few years old, well cared for. You know what I always thought? You had real potential, I mean that. You had the eye, the taste, the instinct. I just think you were always too comfortable, too willing to stay small, and I understand some people want a quiet life. Something steady and predictable. He shrugged. No shame in that at all. The version of Nathalie who had spent months after their breakup lying awake, wondering if he was right, if she had been aiming too low, thinking too small, dressing up comfortable mediocrity as artistic principle, would have felt those words settle in her chest like stones. This version of Nathalie simply said, I'm doing all right. I'm sure you are, he tilted his head. Still in that studio over near Parkdale? We moved offices. Oh, nice. Bigger space? A bit. He laughed again, the same laugh. See, that's what I mean. You're still talking about a bit. You need to think in terms of trajectory, landmark. You know what? Never mind. Old habits. I used to push and you'd pushed back, and now here we are, 10 years later. Life works out the way it's supposed to, I guess. Amber had started checking her phone. Ryan glanced at her, then back at Nathalie. We're heading to the founders' dinner upstairs tonight. Board event, private room, 30 people, invitation only. He said this carefully, the way someone sets down a card and waits to see if the other person folds. It's a good room. The kind of network that actually opens doors. You should try to get access sometime. I could mention your name to the right people if that would ever be helpful. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, this is the moment, because what happens next is the part Ryan really should have anticipated. On the 14th floor, in the private boardroom overlooking the city, Daniel Obi was shaking hands with the last of the investors and sliding the signed term sheet into his folder. The funding round had closed. 47 minutes of questions, 2 interruptions from legal, and then the particular shift that happened in rooms when numbers became real. His assistant Calvin Ng was already at the door. Your driver's confirmed out front. Mrs. Fortin is in the lobby. Daniel checked his watch. He'd kept her longer than he meant to. He was already moving. He took the elevator down, his mind half on Nathalie, half on the dinner reservation he'd made 3 weeks ago at the restaurant upstairs. The one she didn't know about yet, the one with the view of the lake. He was thinking about the look on her face that morning when the call came through, how she'd gone very still for a moment and then said, very quietly, we got it. And he'd understood without being told exactly what 11 years felt like when they became 24 words in a contract. He heard the voice before he saw her. It was the kind of voice that some people developed, loud in the way that was almost accidental, almost designed to carry without appearing to try. I don't know. I just think you could have built something real by now. Something you could actually point to. Daniel stopped at the base of the staircase. He looked across the lobby. Nathalie was standing near the sofas, her tote on her shoulder, her back straight. Her expression was composed, that specific precision she wore when she was working through a problem, holding more variables than she was showing. But her hand had closed around the strap of her bag, and Daniel knew that hand. He knew the difference between her relaxed and her controlled. The man talking at her was broad-shouldered, in a blazer that didn't fit right, gesturing with the easy authority of someone who had never been genuinely wrong about anything in his life. The woman beside him was half attending, her attention drifting to her own reflection in a nearby glass panel. I'm saying this as someone who wanted good things for you, the man continued. You were talented, Nathalie. You are talented. But talent without ambition is just its decoration, right? And you always chose the comfortable option, the safe path, the kind of life where nothing much goes wrong, but nothing much happens either. Nathalie said very quietly, something's happening. Sorry? She shook her head slightly. Doesn't matter. The hairline fracture in her voice, barely there, private, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't paying attention, made Daniel step away from the staircase. Calvin was crossing the lobby from the far side, tablet in hand. Mr. Obi. His voice carried in the afternoon hush. Heads turned, the concierge, 2 guests at the desk, a bellman near the entrance. The car is confirmed at the front, and your table for the founder's dinner has been moved to the main window per your note. I can have your coat brought from the cloakroom whenever you're ready. The name landed the way Daniel's name landed in certain rooms. Ryan's mouth stopped moving. Daniel walked forward. He moved the way he always moved, unhurried, like a man who had nowhere he needed to rush and nowhere he'd rather be. His suit was dark wool, understated, the kind of thing that looked like nothing until you understood cloth. He stopped beside Nathalie and placed his hand on her back, easy and certain, and felt her exhale. Sorry I kept you waiting, he said to her, just to her. Term sheet ran long. Nathalie looked up at him. There was something in her eyes that wasn't quite relief, something quieter than that. A private vindication. The setting down of something she'd been carrying at arm's length. It's okay, she said, I wasn't bored. Daniel turned to face Ryan. He simply looked at him, took in the blazer and the studied casualness and the expression of a man whose mental calculations were visibly struggling to catch up to what his eyes were registering. Daniel Obi, he said, and extended his hand. Ryan shook it. His palm was damp. Ryan Gallagher, we were just, Nathalie and I go way back. I know, Daniel said pleasantly. Ryan's voice dropped half a register. You're the Daniel Obi, Meridian Capital. That's right. Amber had gone very still. She was no longer looking at her phone or her reflection. She was looking at Daniel with the expression of someone who had just understood that a door they thought was permanently closed was not, in fact, a door at all. I didn't realize she was. Ryan's eyes moved between them, recalibrating. She's my wife, Daniel said. The word landed without performance. It was simply true. 3 years in March. Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I want to thank you, Daniel said, for keeping her company while I was finishing up upstairs. He paused just long enough. I hope she wasn't any trouble. No, we were just catching up. Of course. Daniel's voice remained entirely cordial, businesslike. The way someone sounds when they are choosing to be precise and generous at the same time, and both are deliberate. Nathalie reached into her tote then. She pulled out the envelope, plain, cream-colored, unremarkable, and held it for a moment. Then she opened the clasp and slid the document halfway out. Just enough for the letterhead to be visible, the firm's stamp, the city's seal beside it, the signatures at the bottom. We moved offices, she said, looking at Ryan. I mentioned that earlier. You did. We're in the merchant building now, 11th and 12th floors. She tilted the document slightly. This came through this morning. We won the contract to lead design on the Lakeshore Commons development. Mixed use, residential and commercial, 64,000 square meters on the waterfront. She slid it back into the envelope with care. We beat out 4 other firms for it. One of them was Whitmore and Gallagher. The silence had a particular texture to it. Amber turned and looked at Ryan. Ryan's face had gone the color of old paper. That's, he started. Congratulations on your King West unit, by the way, Nathalie said. She zipped the tote closed. That really is a good corner. Daniel looked at Ryan one last time. There was nothing hostile in it, nothing triumphant. The steady assessment of a man who had watched this particular dynamic play out across enough boardrooms to recognize it on sight, and who had learned long ago that the most effective response to most things was simply accuracy. We have a reservation, Daniel said. Good to meet you, Ryan. He touched Nathalie's back and they turned to go. Nathalie. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. I didn't know about the contract, about any of it. If I had known you were going to. She paused. She didn't turn all the way, just enough. Be somebody, she said. She said it quietly, without anger, without edge. There were maybe 20 people in the lobby, guests arriving, staff passing through, a family at the far desk, and all of them had gone collectively still. I was already somebody, Ryan. She looked at him steadily. You just always used the wrong measurements. She walked toward the elevator. Daniel walked beside her, he pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. Behind them they heard Amber's voice, sharp and urgent. That's Meridian Capital. Ryan, do you know what Lakeshore Commons is worth? Do you understand what you just? The doors closed. Marble, brass, silence. Nathalie leaned against the wall of the elevator and let out a long breath. How much did you hear? She asked. Enough. Daniel's jaw was set. Too much. The part where he offered to put in a word for you at the founders' dinner specifically. Nathalie closed her eyes briefly. He was very generous about it. I noticed. He turned to look at her. You were incredible out there, I want you to know that. I wanted to walk over 10 minutes earlier. Why didn't you? He thought about it. Because you weren't asking to be rescued. You were already handling it. I would have been interrupting. The elevator moved upward, silent and unhurried. He's on tonight's guest list, Nathalie said after a moment. The founders' dinner, junior bracket. I'm aware. That is genuinely unfortunate for him. It is. She pressed her lips together. Then she started laughing. Not the polite kind, not the managed kind, but the full chest kind that came when pressure released all at once, and there was nowhere to put it except out. Daniel watched her and felt the thing he always felt watching her, which was a specific and uncomplicated gratitude for having walked into a gallery on a Tuesday afternoon 4 years ago. Because he had 30 minutes to spare, and a grandfather's watch that needed a new strap, and having found a woman standing in front of a painting he didn't understand, perfectly still, clearly thinking something he very much wanted to know. He had not known about her firm, had not known about her work, her awards, her 11 years of building something real and exact in hers. He had simply wanted to know what she thought about the painting. Everything else had come after. He thought he was doing me a favor, she managed, catching her breath. Offering to make introductions. He had this look on his face the whole time like he was being very patient with me. He was being very patient with you, Daniel confirmed. Very generous. Big-hearted really, given how ordinary your life appeared to be. The tote bag really sold it. The tote bag was masterful. She laughed again, and Daniel smiled at the ceiling of the elevator, and the doors opened to the private floor. Calvin was waiting, their coats folded over his arm, his expression professional and carefully neutral in the way it got. When he had witnessed something he was choosing not to comment on. Reservation in 40 minutes, he said, eyes on his tablet. And your phone has been going, Mr. Obi. I've forwarded the priority items. Thank you, Calvin. In the restaurant 3 floors up, over a table at the tall window with the lake spread out below. Dark water, the far lights of Mississauga on the horizon, a line of freighters moving slowly south. Nathalie's phone lit up with a cascade of notifications. A Globe and Mail alert on the Lakeshore Commons announcement. 3 texts from her team, each one more exclamation points than the last. An email from the City of Toronto's development office about a press call tomorrow morning. And 1 message near the bottom from an unknown number. Hi Nathalie, this is Amber. I got your contact from a mutual connection. I want to say I had absolutely no idea who you were today or who your husband was. I'm sorry if I came across a certain way. I also wanted to ask, is Meridian Capital currently accepting associate applications? I have a background in communications and I think I could add real value to. Nathalie held the phone out for Daniel to read. He read it twice. The timing is something. Remarkable timing. Don't answer it tonight. She put the phone face down on the table. I wasn't going to. Or ever, if that suits you. That does suit me. He refilled her glass. Outside, the lake was doing what the lake always did in October, moving without urgency toward the far horizon, indifferent and enormous. Tell me about the contract, Daniel said. All of it, from when the call came in. Nathalie picked up her glass and told him. Across the city in a West End kitchen he'd rented 2 years ago, because the neighborhood was, as he had told several people at the time, really coming up, Ryan Gallagher sat at his kitchen counter with his laptop open and his beer going warm beside him. The founder's dinner had been exactly as bad as he'd understood it, would be approximately 4 minutes after sitting down at his assigned table. Someone had brought up the Lakeshore announcement. Several people had looked at him. The kind of careful, measured look that professionals exchange when they were choosing to exercise restraint in a situation that did not require restraint, but where it was the polite option. He'd left at 8:30. His phone had been running since 6. His boss had sent 3 words and a question mark. His college roommate had sent a screenshot of a LinkedIn post. Nathalie's firm's official announcement, clean and brief, 4,000 likes in 3 hours, with the message, "Wait, is this the woman you used to give a hard time about her career goals?" His mother had called twice and he'd let it go to voicemail both times. He opened Meridian Capital's website. He found the leadership page. Daniel Obi's photo was calm, formal. The founding story was there, the portfolio, the press coverage from the last 4 years. Ryan scrolled down to the advisory board section and found her in the 3rd row. Small professional photo, her expression the same as it had been in the lobby, composed, slightly amused by something she wasn't sharing. Nathalie Fortin, lead design partner, Fortin Architecture. Specialty, urban residential and mixed-use development. Recent, Lakeshore Commons Meridian City of Toronto joint venture. 2023 Canada Council for the Arts Prize in Architecture. Ryan closed the laptop. Outside, the rain had started. Toronto at 9:30 on a Tuesday, the kind of night that seemed to go on past its own ending. He sat with his hands flat on the counter and thought about a conversation he had started in a hotel lobby that afternoon. A conversation he had been very certain he was running, and understood, clearly and far too late, that he had been the only person in it who hadn't known what was actually happening. Nathalie had known, from the first sentence. She had simply been waiting for him to finish.